Okay, good morning, Saints. I want to take this opportunity to share with us something that is really interesting that I've found out in the scriptures, and it's about the power of decision making on what you decide to see, what you decide to hear, and all those things that normally man is afraid of talking of. And taking the approach of the life of Jesus, and it's going to be based in the book of Mark. And basically, the common principle in life is that whichever decision you make in life, you'll either have to experience pain at the moment, that's instant pain, or the pain will be distributed over a period of time. And it's upon you to decide which, but far much better, it's better for you to make a decision to experience pain instantly than having to experience the same pain over a period of time. And part of the experiences that the Bible records is the experience of the disciples with Jesus. Now, it was not Jesus' will that the disciples should not know about his death, and it was not his wish that they should run away or get confused around his death as they were, because most of them they were so much discouraged. Actually, most of them went back to their profession, their previous profession before they call into the ministry. So you realize that in the Bible, in the book of Mark, many times Jesus wanted to talk to his disciples about uh, his death and resurrection, and many times the disciples felt that he shouldn't be talking about it. And one instance we get in the book of Mark, chapter 8, uh, and verse 31, which says that, "And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again." He spoke this word openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when he had turned around and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men." Now, uh, you look at the disciples here, they were so scared about this topic of Jesus dying because they had put all their faith and trust in him, and they actually thought that Jesus was going to be a Messiah, a ruler who was going to rule forever, just as it had been predicted. But they didn't know that he was coming to establish a kingdom, which is the kingdom of heaven, which could actually spread all around the world and invite many people to come and join the kingdom of heaven, and be able uh, to receive the kingdom of eternity when he comes. And you can see that also in the same book of Mark, and chapter 9 and verse 30, where again he decides to tell his disciples about his death and resurrection, which says that then they departed from there and passed through Galilee, and he did not want anyone to know it. For he taught his disciples and said to them, "The Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and after he is killed, he will rise the third day. He will rise the third day." But they did not understand his saying, and were afraid to ask him. Now, the nature of man, if like somebody uh, told you to speak about your death, or uh, we are generally afraid of speaking about death. Wherever we sit down and start thinking about, okay, even when you're in the hospital and somebody tells you, "I'm going to die," I've been in the same experience before where I had a patient, and one of the afternoons I went to visit her, she told me that, "Hey, Dan, I'm dying." I was so hurt. I actually spent the whole afternoon encouraging her and telling her how God will not allow her to die. And that's basically the general principle of human beings. We don't want to speak about death. But here, wherever Jesus was introducing this topic, the disciples didn't want to hear anything about it, despite the fact that he wanted to give them all the information. Perhaps if they had allowed him to discuss about the whole scenario behind his death, uh, they could have understood, and they couldn't have been disappointed, or they couldn't have been surprised at how the whole process went, to an extent that they lost all their hope, because Jesus, every other time, he was willing to discuss with them. And you can see it in very many ways, especially on the question about, you can see the willingness of Jesus to discuss the issues with the disciples, especially on the question about divorce. When the scribes asked Jesus the question about divorce, whether it's lawful, he answered and he answered them and said that uh, Moses commanded Moses commanded you to divorce and issue certificate of divorces because of the hardness of your heart. But he did not answer explicitly on what conditions uh, are agreeable for divorce to the scribes. But meeting the disciples aside, he told them that the only reason why you're allowed to divorce is for the cause of adultery. In case of adultery, then you are allowed to divorce. That's the only reason that Jesus justifies the a case where you are allowed to divorce someone. Now, he didn't give that to the scribes, he gave it to the disciples on a different forum. And many times he could discuss his parables aside with the disciples wherever they met in the house and they were discussing. He always opened up and discussed much more of this stuff to them. Now, for him to mention this is the only subject that wherever Jesus mentioned, the disciples always didn't want to listen about it. They always made sure that he kept quiet and he had nothing to talk about it. And they were always afraid, as it said in the book of Mark. Uh, that's in chapter 9 and verse 32. But they did not understand whatever he was telling them, and they were afraid to ask him. Now, the other time again that Jesus starts speaking about his death, that is in Mark chapter 10 and verse 32, it's when they were on the road to Jerusalem and they are all afraid and Jesus is leading them, because they always knew that wherever Jesus gets into Jerusalem, there is a circus or something that has to happen and people have to do something, or they have to accuse them, and scribes have to come and reproach them and bring up arguments, and the Pharisees. So they were afraid on this particular instance. And on their way to Jerusalem, that's in Mark chapter 10 in verse 32, Jesus decided to take the lead and they followed him. And then he started saying, again predicting his death, and he said, "Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles, and they will mock him and scourge him and spit on him and kill him, and the third day he will rise again." Now, he was telling them exactly the details of how things are going to happen in Jerusalem. But listen to what the disciples decided to do. James and John, who are the sons of Zebedee, came to him and said, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." This is our prayer. Jesus is telling them about his death, but them, they are just thinking about what the Pharisees had taught before, which is he's going to establish a kingdom, because they are very sure. At this particular point, the disciples were pretty sure that this Jesus was the Messiah who they were waiting for, Israel, and they were expecting him to establish an earthly kingdom. Now, when he's telling them that he's going to be killed, they don't want to talk about that. They think that, hey, maybe this guy's out of his mind and he's joking about it. So what they do is, James and John come and tell Jesus that we want you to do for us whatever we ask. And then he told them, uh, "What do you want me to do for you?" Then they say to him, "Grant us that we may sit, one on your right hand and the other on your left in your glory." Now, Jesus' crucifixion is an act of glory, because it's on the cross where humanity is brought down as as divinity ascends. Yeah. So the throne that Jesus was to take on this earth is the cross. And here, the disciples, instead of opening up and allowing him, putting their fears aside and allowing him to discuss with them exactly about what was going to become of him, they decided that they want to sit one on his left and one on his right. Now, listen to what Jesus said. You do not know what you ask. That's in Mark chapter 10, verse 38. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink and be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized with? Now remember, when Jesus was crucified on the cross, one thief was crucified on the right and one thief was crucified on the left. Now basically here, James and John, they were hoping that Jesus is going to take up a throne, which they didn't understand what kind of throne it was, but they wanted him, one to sit on the right and one on the left. Basically, what they were asking for in this prayer is that they be crucified with Jesus, one on the right and one on the left. This calls us as Christians, because basically this kind of prayer is based on self-interest. When Jesus went up to the mountain to pray, most of the time he said that not my will, but your will, God, be done. But this one here, James and John are so much interested in what they can benefit from the life of Jesus, not knowing what was becoming of him or what was coming, what was upcoming for Jesus. And because of their selfishness, they are offering a prayer which they don't know what it is about. And again, not just not knowing what it is about, they are not willing to understand about the future that God had put in place for them. And here Jesus pitied them and asked them, do you know what you're asking? Are you able to be crucified with me on the cross? Are you able to take up what I'm going to take? And then they just answered and said that we are able. So Jesus pitying them also said that you will indeed drink of the cup which that I drink, and with the baptism I am baptized with, you'll be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left, it's not mine to give, but it's for those to whom it is prepared. Now here, Jesus is not talking about sitting on the right or the left in heaven. He's telling them, okay, persecution you will have, the tribulations that I've gone through on this earth you will have. But now, for those who are going to sit on the right hand or on my left hand, it's not your business. It is the business of those who it has been prepared for. So here Jesus was saying already, on this throne, on the cross where humanity is going to be, to descend as divinity ascends, there's already a group of people who have been appointed for that particular time to sit with him on the cross and to be able to partake the cup of death with him. So basically that is what Jesus is speaking about. And I felt that this is a challenge unto all of us for one particular reason. Most of the time we are told to pray, and we are told to pray to God and tell him that, dear God, may your will be done. We are always very scared of what God's will is, not knowing that God already knows the future and he has a perfect will for us. And sometimes we pray for some things in life, and we pray because of our selfishness and for our own selfish interest, not knowing the pain that comes with what we are praying for, and not knowing what God's perfect will is in our prayers. So I want to motivate all of us that first, seek to listen to God. If the disciples had listened to God, they would have known which kind of throne was awaiting him. They would have known what it meant to sit on the left and on the right hand. If they would have listened to him, they wouldn't have had to go through all that experience of doubt and of hopelessness at the cross, at seeing their Messiah lifted up on the cross, running away from multitudes because they thought that uh, uh, the same that had happened to their master or their shepherd could be done to them. They wouldn't have had if they only were not scared, if they were courageous enough to talk to God about the things that were to come before Him, however painful the life ahead of them could be, they couldn't have. Instead, they would have uh, had more hope in Jesus. They would have dependent upon Him. They would have actually, whenever they saw these things happening, they could be glad that everything that their master told them had come to pass, and they are going to see Him again on the third day. And they couldn't have asked the kind of uh, prayers that they could have prayed for. So before you pray about anything, number one, always listen to God. Always listen to God. Don't be afraid of discussing anything with Him, whatever your situation is, whether it's a disease or anything that you feel you are scared about to talk about in life. Speak it out with God. Open your heart to Him as a friend. Tell Him everything and allow Him an opportunity to explain to Him what the future holds for you. Number two, don't pray selfish prayers because you don't know what kind of answer those prayers are going to give. You don't know what kind of answer or what kind of thing you are praying for. God knows it better. That's why He tells James and John by Him saying that in Mark chapter 10, verse 40. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it's for those for whom it is prepared. He's just telling them, it's like it's not you people, because it's not prepared for you basically. It's for those whom it has been prepared. You'd want to be crucified with me, you don't know what it means to be crucified with me. For them, they are thinking it's a favor, it's something glorious that is going to happen. So, as you pray every day in your life, seek the will of God. Don't seek your own gratification. Don't seek your own will. Always depend upon God. So, may God bless you even as you learn something from these verses. May God be with you, and may He protect you, and may He enable you to learn about Him through His word, for His word is true. His word never fails, and He always, sometimes He doesn't answer prayers the way we want because of the pain that could come along if He did things the way we want. And personally, I'm not interested in a God who does things the way I want, because we'll be stuck in the same problems. I'm interested in a God whose thoughts are higher than human thoughts, the one who created the universe, the one who has the kind of wisdom that cannot be compared to any of His creation. Have a blessed day, and may God bless you.